My name, for those of you I haven't yet met, is Jeremy, and I have the privilege of being rector here at St Martin's. And it's my honour and my privilege this afternoon to be leading us through our gathering as we've come together for the launch of this incredibly wonderful, powerful, and highly important anthology. There it is, Heartbreak, Hope, and a Call for Change, the overlooked stories of road crash victims. As I'm leading you through today, everything you can find is there in the program that you received on the way in. For those of you who are going to be contributing, I'm going to invite you forward, and may I encourage you, please, that when you come forward, we make sure that you're nice and close to the microphone so that everybody can hear you nice and clearly, because also this event is being filmed and we want to make sure that everybody can hear you on the recording as well. If that's a concern for you, then you may want to make sure that you're not in view of the cameras. There is going to be an official photographer taking pictures during this event, and so we ask that others don't take photographs as we go through. So without any further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to invite our great friends Lucy and Jane, who are going to come and introduce our afternoon. Heartbreak, Hope, and a Call for Change. Why? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jane Evans. About 18 months ago, Lucy and I started talking about trying to bring some of the voices of those impacted through road crashes together into one book or anthology. It started as some simple thoughts, turned into a growing idea, became our lockdown project, and ultimately has brought us all here today.
For those of us who have lost a loved one through a road traffic crash, today will be a mix of emotions. Maybe there will be some comfort in seeing our loved ones remembered and in joining together as one community to support one another. Yet there will also be immense sadness, as the reality is we will all wish we had never had the need to be a part of this event, but rather still had our loved ones here with us.
The grief that is experienced following the loss of a loved one in a road traffic collision is overwhelming. The knock at the door or the telephone call, which comes completely unexpected, changes your life forever.
Then there is the turmoil, the chaos, the trauma, and the inability to make sense out of a world which feels as though it has been turned completely upside down.
Over the past 5 years since the RoadPeace West Midlands group formed, we have listened to the stories of those who attend our group. We have listened to those who have spoken at our remembrance services. And though each of us is different and our losses are unique, we have shared heartbreak together. We wanted to create our anthology as some kind of positive outlet for our pain, a way that we could use the power of the written word to tell our stories. Most importantly, to remember those we have lost, but also to give wider society just a tiny sense of what this loss is like and why crash victims need support, compassion, and care, and why people should think when they get behind the wheel of a vehicle.
As we reached out to each person and asked them to take part in this project, we were overwhelmed with heartbreak, but equally we were overwhelmed with hope. We know that for many, contributing to this anthology was far from easy and took huge courage. We know that many of you worried about what to write and struggled to convey your feelings in just a page or two. Yet you did so, and you all told us how much you wanted to try and help those other families who will sadly find themselves in this situation. Each time a contribution was emailed over to us, Jane and I would need to take a few moments, stunned at the raw and honest feelings you were brave enough to share, and privileged to be trusted with your words, precious memories, and photographs.
There was hope also to be found in the contributions of the emergency services, CPS, and those politicians who have taken part in their willingness to support this project and this cause, and to have faith in our group and faith in RoadPeace without question. We thank them all. and especially those who have joined us today, and those who have worked with and engaged with us, Elaine, and the other members of our group over the last few years.
So what about the call for change? We all owe a debt of gratitude to RoadPeace for the work they have done since they were set up in 1992 and for the steps forward they have achieved. We owe so much to the amazing people who have made up this charity, who have given years to campaigning, who provide us with an endless friendship and inspire us daily. And yet, despite all this brilliant work, when it comes to road crash victims, the list of injustices remains long.
From the unnecessary second post-mortems, which are in some cases still allowed, the inadequate sentencing, the need for longer and even lifetime driving bans, the need to reduce the 24 hours allowed to report a crash,
to the need for a new charge for those who fail to remain at the scene of a serious injury or fatal crash, or the need for those arrested upon suspicion of an offence which carries a mandatory driving ban to have their licences suspended immediately and not be allowed to continue to drive until they appear in court, sometimes over a year later.
And perhaps most simply, yet vitally, for all to stop referring to road traffic accidents. The word accident trivialising our losses and summing up society's wrongful acceptance of death and serious injury on our roads. They are crashes, not accidents. Many of the stories in our anthology highlight these injustices. And as we go forward from today, we hope those of you who are not already standing with RoadPeace in the call for change will read our anthology and feel compelled to do so.
So now we have talked about the content of our anthology, we must talk about the people who have made this happen. CFG, and in particular Steve Maloret and Emma Yem. We do not think even 1,000 thank yous will ever be enough.
In 2020, CFG began working with us as a part of the RoadPeace legal panel structure. And Nick, the RoadPeace CEO, trusted us to run with our ideas. And what a joy this has been. Steve and Emma, thank you for believing in RoadPeace West Midlands. Thank you for wanting to tell our stories. Thank you for taking our every idea and talking it through and then making it a reality. You have worked tirelessly and you have given so much.
Thank you for your kindness and your creativity, your endless care and your attention to detail, your determination to make sure every element of this anthology was well thought out, your patience and understanding with us too, and the absolute respect that you have shown to the story of every single person who has taken part.
We must also say a huge thank you to the team at St Martin in the Bullring for once again welcoming us here, and especially to Jeremy and Juliet, who go out of their way to support RoadPeace West Midlands, and will welcome us again in November for our Remembrance service.
Finally, we must say thank you to each and every one of you who have joined with us today. Some of those in our West Midlands group now refer to us as being like a second family. This is something which has, on occasion, made both Jane and I burst into tears. The West Midlands group and our wider friends to us are very special, and the respect, the kindness and the commitment to support each other no matter what that you all show to each other is deeply moving.
So we close today by saying, we hope that when you get your anthologies, you are as proud of this project as we are, as we come together as RoadPeace West Midlands family, a family we wish we never needed, but are so very glad we found.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve from CFG Law, who has been mentioned very kindly by Jane and Lucy already. We've been working with RoadPeace for a number of years, both nationally with the Merseyside and North West group, and since the last 18 months with the West Midlands support group. For those of you that don't know, Jane and Lucy run the bi-monthly meetings where members can meet up to talk openly with people who have similar shared experiences. And I've been honoured to be invited to those meetings over the last 18 months. The meetings used to run in person, but when COVID struck, they've been held over Zoom. So my original plan to help out by providing tea and coffee, or maybe a venue for the meetings, quickly became redundant. This led me to ask Jane and Lucy a question. Is there anything else we could help with? And the line came back that set all of this in motion. We've got this idea about an anthology. I genuinely didn't know what to say, partly because at that stage, I'm not sure any of us involved had a clear picture of what the end result might look like. What we did know is how important it is to remember loved ones, share their stories and individuality through the remembrance services and support meetings that RoadPeace already run. Our vision now was to have a physical, permanent piece of work that encapsulated this, not only capturing those who had been bereaved by road traffic collisions, but all those affected by road crime. So you'll see contributions from the emergency services, journalists that cover the incidents, and all those that support road crash victims, even lawyers. The second aim was the call for change. And it is reassuring to see how many influential people readily contributed to the book and have taken the time out to support the launch today. Finally, I'd like to thank all the contributors, especially the members of RoadPeace West Midlands Group, who opened their hearts and shared their stories. Thanks to Jane, Lucy, and my colleague Emma in putting the book together. I just hope it has as much of an impact on you reading it as it did for us in producing it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Being a police officer for nearly 20 years, I've knocked on many a door to give a family the most awful news that a loved one is dead. The horror, the heartbreak, the grief of the news that you have just delivered changes lives in an instant. I never expected to find myself on the other side of that door. However, on the 26th of November 2018, at 4:30 p.m, I was. An ashen-faced traffic officer told me that my brother had been killed that afternoon. Paul had been hit by a HGV while on his mountain bike. I've relived that day, that moment, over and over again. I best describe it as the day that my flame was blown out. This is the only way I can describe this, because up until that point, life was great from all aspects. Family life was amazing, work was great, everything was heading upwards and onwards. That day I'd been cooking dinner when I was told Paul was dead. I recall the officer taking the saucepan from my hand and helping me to a seat, before going through all the details he had to give me. But then if that news was not awful enough, more was to come, in being told that the driver had tested positive for drugs. Sitting down, listening to all that I was being told to me, and now looking back and thinking of the families I have sat with in that same situation, it certainly brings home the impact of that knock on the door. Being surrounded by the grief from the death of a loved one, while also having to deal with everything that goes with this, is just so hard to comprehend. But things have to be done. The funeral, Paul's house and his possessions. Then on top of this, the awfulness of going through a court case. I had never experienced emotions like these. My grief turned to anger, which in time turned to hatred, pure, unadulterated hatred. I had never felt this way in my life, and it was truly awful. It took time, but I learned that talking helps. It helps so much to unburden yourself of those emotions, that grief, that anger and that hatred. Yes, there are still bad days, some very, very bad days, but it's a case of learning how to deal with them and not letting them take over. The support from groups and from friends and family is unmeasurable. Just over 2 years have passed now. We're approaching the 3rd anniversary of my brother's death. And I have asked many people who have been unfortunate enough to experience what I have, whether my flame will ever relight. No one can actually answer that because we do not know the answer. I can only hope, with the support of family, friends, and the amazing people involved in groups such as RoadPeace West Midlands, that I may one day be able to have my flame burning bright once more. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sudden, 6 years on. Sudden, just a simple word, but to me it opened a cavity that can never be closed again. The phone call, the taking in of the information, however little you take in, it blows your mind. Oh, the pain that takes your breath away. It seems never ending. My dad, my hero, survived the impact of this weapon called a car. It then became a journey, a path we was all so frightened to walk. The visiting, the waiting, the praying, but most of all the hoping. Oh, the hoping. 23 days of watching this strong man weaken and fade slowly away in front of our eyes. The pain was unbearable, our hope shattered, our lives in pieces. As I held my dad in my arms, Dad's body was limp as he slipped away into a deep sleep, never to wake again. My head buzzing. How? Why? Dad's life should not have ended this way. Walking across a road, only a few yards from his home, on a Saturday lunchtime. Visibility good, road conditions dry. Dad had no idea that a driver behind the wheel of this one-day-old, powerful car was approaching. A driver showing off in aggressive manner, undertaking, and showing no respect for other road users. On that dreadful day, the 7th of June, 2014, my dad was not given a chance of completing his crossing safely. Dad used to say to me, "Don't worry so much. I know how to fall and not hurt myself. Learnt that in the army." However, this was no use to him when he was being tossed in the air, landing and hitting the windscreen, roof and bonnet of this weapon called a car that was used on him. Remorse shown by the driver? None at all. He just got out of his car, checked the damage, and he rang a friend, not an ambulance. At Crown Court, the driver's defence barrister tried to explain his actions as being down to shock. I have no words to describe how I feel. I can only say that this will always haunt me. No remorse for taking a life. 6 years on, does time heal? How many times do people say that to you? Well, time does not heal, but in its defence, it helps. And so too do organisations such as RoadPeace and Break, family liaison officers, some family members, and some friends. But most of all, the people in RoadPeace, West Midlands support group. Thank goodness there are people there who understand. No words need to be spoken. They just know how you feel. And why do they? It is because they're all treading the same path of emotions. Not at the same time, but they are there and they understand. Just like me, this remarkable group of people have experienced sudden, that little word that opens up a cavity that can never be filled again. Why? Well, because we're all missing our loved one or loved ones, and they're the only ones that can fill the cavity for us. I personally find the support group and the special services held in memory of our loved ones comforting, because this is what we're left with, memories to hold close to our broken hearts. One of the things that comforts me most is knowing that my dad, my hero, is never forgotten. His life was precious to me. I admire him. He was my strength. He was simply my dad, taken suddenly before his time. I thank my dad for his wisdom and his wicked sense of fun. And I feel so blessed that he was a huge part of my life. My hero, Reginald Reggie William Morris. Thank you all for listening.
2 tragic road collisions involving victims from Erdington led me to work closely together with bereaved families campaigning for justice for their loved ones. The families' determination, like those that we have heard today, through grief to campaign for justice is remarkable and never ceases to be an inspiration to those around them. The stories we've heard today, the stories, so many of them we've heard over the years, are heartbreaking. Underneath is the utter resolve of the families to secure justice, but also a deep sense of hope that through their campaigns, no other family should ever have to endure the grief that they have lived with. In July 2012, Sarah Child, 26 years old, and her sister Claire, who was 30 weeks pregnant, watched a film together at their mum's and stepdad's house before taking a short walk. As they crossed the Walsall Road, they were struck by a driver that was driving at 64 miles an hour. The driver made no attempt to slow down. Sarah was thrown into the air and tragically died from her injuries. Thankfully, Claire and her unborn baby survived the collision. The aftermath of Sarah's death was devastating for her mum, Avril. Every time I see Avril, she weeps because she can never come to terms with the loss of Sarah. After the initial trauma of the event, however, Avril was overcome with frustration at the subsequent trial of the driver. After pleading guilty to causing death by dangerous driving, the driver received just a 4-year sentence. As Avril has said to me often, if he had killed with any other weapon, he would have been tried for murder. Even more frustrating was that whilst the driver was disqualified from driving for 4 years, this ban started during his time in prison and therefore did nothing to prevent him from driving upon his release. Avril resolved to prevent these 2 injustices from occurring again, and it's been an honor to work with her on her campaign. Together, we were successful in ensuring that the law was changed, that those disqualified from driving served their bans on release from prison, not during their sentence. The campaign, however, to ensure that those who cause death by dangerous driving face tougher sentences continues. In July 2016, 3-year-old Poppy Arabella Clark and her mum, Rachel, Poppy was described as an angel, were waiting to cross the Chester Road. As the pedestrian lights turned green, they made their way across the road before they were mown down by a driver who failed to see the red light. Rachel woke up in the gutter with serious injuries. Poppy Arabella lay just a few feet away. Sadly, Poppy Arabella would die from her injuries. During the following court case, it came to light that the 72-year-old driver had been twice told by optometrists in the weeks leading up to the collision that even whilst wearing his glasses, his poor eyesight made him unfit to drive. Despite these warnings, the driver still got behind the wheel that day without no glasses, and as a consequence, Poppy died a terrible death. The witnesses explained that the driver did not swerve, did not brake, and did not stop. He was only pulled over when flagged down by another driver hundreds of yards up the road. Since then, Poppy Arabella's parents have campaigned to make it a requirement of the medical professionals that they must inform the DVLA of someone medically unfit to drive. Not advisory, they must inform the DVLA, and for that to be underpinned by changes in the law. After the grief that they have suffered, they are determined that no one else should have their lives shattered as they were on the day when young Poppy Arabella Clark lost her life. It's been an immense privilege to witness the devotion of her parents to Poppy Arabella and the love for her that will always endure. The campaigns born out of these two collisions are so powerful because of their exposure of the total inadequacy of the law for the families of the victims of road traffic crashes. It seems incomprehensible that someone can kill another human being by dangerous driving and receive just a 4-year sentence. Likewise, it seems unbelievable that there's no proper process for ensuring that if professionals know that somebody is unfit to drive, that they must report that accordingly to ensure the necessary action is taken. Rectifying these two gaps in our justice and licensing system could prevent so much more suffering. The two families in my constituency, with my colleague here today, Liam Byrne, tragic cases in his constituency as well. They've shown remarkable fortitude to pursue the changes necessary. As their Member of Parliament, but with all of us here today, we will always ensure their voices are heard. Susan, they will never be forgotten. We will always stand on their side.
Good afternoon, everybody. The thoughts in my head. It's the end of another long shift. They say being a paramedic is a gift. As my kit goes away and I start driving home, I'm alone and left with the thoughts in my head. I know I'll be going home to my family, and I know that I'll be able to cuddle them too. But the thoughts in my head of the events of my shift are still very much there in my head. That thought, I hear you ask. Well, they say superheroes wear green, but there are times when we're unable to fix, mend and heal. Our superpowers are just not strong enough as we attend, focus and deal with the dreadful collision that's in front of us and oh, so very real. Those faces stay with us forever. The wedding band that they wear or the small shoes on their feet. The families we know they are a part of. The horrific devastation that will be caused stays with us forever. The thoughts in my head mean that they will stay with me forever too.
I stand at the front door. I have done this so many times before, but it does not get any easier. I have no idea who lives here. I just know that I'm about to change their lives forever. I ring the doorbell. A lady answers the door and gives me a bewildered smile upon seeing my uniform. I ask to come in, and she lets me in without question. I take off my hat and follow her into the lounge, past toys and drawings that clearly belong to children. I tell her to sit down and ask her if she is alone. She tells me she is. Her children are at school and her husband has gone to work. I check her name and ask her to confirm the name of her husband, and she tells me. She asks me what is wrong. I can see that it's dawning upon her that I have bad news. What do I say? No words are the right words, but I'm acutely aware that whatever words I use will have a profound effect upon her forever. That is a huge responsibility. I tell her that we are currently at the scene of a serious collision. We believe that one of the people involved is her husband, and that I'm very sorry to have to tell her that he has died. The shock is replaced by disbelief. Am I sure it's him? It can't be. She only saw him a few hours ago. His tea's in the oven. They're going to friends at the weekend. How does she tell the children? And so our journey together begins. I sit with her. I tell her that there will be a full investigation into the circumstances of the collision. I tell her that this investigation will be lengthy and complex, and right from the start, I try to manage what she can expect. I talk about post-mortems, the investigation process, court hearings, and the press. I know that she is not taking this in. Shock and trauma will prevent her from processing it, but I reassure her that I will be there with her every step of the way. She asks if she can see her husband, and I promise her that I will do my best to arrange that. She asks me what happened, and I tell her that the exact circumstances are still under investigation, so I'm not able to tell her much at the moment. Eventually, I leave her. I agonise over the words I used and replay the scenario, wondering if I got it right. I am back at the front door. She opens it and lets me in. My news today is no easier to deliver. Today, their 2 children are there. I see them as they are ushered out of the room, one too young to understand and the other confused and bewildered. I try to push away the thoughts of all the milestones they will miss celebrating with their dad. Today, I have to tell her that the post-mortem has taken place, but the pathologist has taken the brain for a more detailed examination. I decide to call it the brain instead of his brain to try to impersonalise the situation. Does this have any effect? I have no idea, but I have put a lot of thought into this. The look of horror and devastation on her face tells me that it has not softened the blow. I did not really expect that it would. I also have to explain that there may have to be a second post-mortem at the request of the other party involved in the collision, who is under investigation regarding the death of her husband. Her horror turns to anger. How can this be fair? It's not fair. None of it is. I am standing at the front door. Today, I am taking her to say goodbye to her husband. We stand in the chapel of rest, and I do my best to describe what she will see. I walk in with her, and I put my arms around her. She collapses, sobbing. She composes herself, and I stand back, trying to be unobtrusive. It is upsetting to hear her tell him how much she misses him, how the children are struggling without him. I feel like an intruder, and I try and distract myself from this truly heartbreaking scene with thoughts of grocery lists. It only partially works. Perhaps those are some of the hardest parts over with now. The investigation continues, and I keep her updated regularly with progress, although I can hear the tension in her voice return whenever I speak my name on the phone. The investigation is slow. I reassure her that this is normal. There are times when she is angry with me, but I know it's not personal. That does not stop me thinking about how I can try and make things better for her before I realise I cannot. I am back at the front door. I'm here to tell her that a decision has been made to charge the other party with causing the death of her husband. I discuss the court process with her and the sentencing guidelines. I tell her that sentencing for road death is woefully inadequate. I always say this because it is. She's dragged through a trial. The facts are discussed in detail, and the defendant is clearly remorseless. The tension is almost unbearable as we wait for the verdict to be given. Thankfully, it is guilty. I watch her incredulity as the defence counsel tell the court just how remorseful the defendant is and ask for leniency in the sentence. The sentence is passed, pitiful in comparison to the crime. It has been an exhausting roller coaster of emotions. Trials always are. They do not get any easier either. I am here at the front door. One last time, I say goodbye. I will think of her and her children in times to come. I remember them all.
Whatever the circumstances and whatever the nature of the relationship, the death of someone we love is always an incredibly difficult thing to face. It is inevitably painful and sad experience, which may produce a whole variety of different feelings of loss, grief, guilt, frustration, and invariably a sense of what might have been. And when the death is unexpected, brutal, shocking, avoidable, and unnecessary, is it not fair to say those emotions are even more amplified? And the great challenge of death is that at one level it is just so final and so definite. And however much we would like to stop it happening, unwind things, reverse the events, or go back and make things different, we can't. And suddenly the person we were talking to, sitting next to, eating with, laughing with, and making plans with has gone. That person we loved has gone. Their death is irreversible, and each one is irreplaceable. Their passing, even if seemingly unnoticed, leaves a hole in the life of our communities, our towns and cities, and in our world, but of course most especially in your lives, in our lives. Their death has left a hole inside each one of us, as if someone has reached inside us and removed a part of our very own life. The hole, the space, will never be completely filled because it is as unique and as special as our loved one was to each of us. But that's not the whole picture. However great our loss, however painful our mourning, I want to suggest that in 3 fundamental ways that death is not the end. It's not final. Firstly, our loved ones continue to live on in us. We, as their family and their friends, are their primary legacy they leave in this world. Maybe for some, they will live on in a physical resemblance. Some people say, I get more like my old man every day I get older. I don't know. But more than mere physical appearance, their influence will have been central and integral to the people we have become, the shape and character of our lives. You see, each one of us has been enriched and blessed by their love and friendship, the times we've spent together and the experiences we have shared. Our lives would have been so much less for not having known them. Put simply, we would not be the people we are today. Our loved ones live on in us. Secondly, of course, they live on in our memories. Special occasions, certain places, or even little actions will spark off all kinds of memories that will remind us of them and help to keep them alive in our hearts. And just because that very special person has died, may I encourage us to resist the tendency and temptation to lock the memories away, as if the pain of thinking about them will just be too much to bear. That is how the person will fade, pushed to the margins and the dark corners of memories and emotions. You see, rather our memories are a living treasure that we can hold in our hearts, reflect on, share together. Memories to make us cry, memories to make us think and wonder, and I hope even plenty of memories to make us laugh and smile. And as we constantly reflect on those memories, we will find that our loved one is kept very much alive within us. So at one level, it is up to us. Will they be left to quietly slip to the margins of our minds and the recesses of our memory? Or will we choose, despite the pain, to keep them in the forefront of our minds and make them an easy and comfortable part of our gatherings and our conversations? Will we choose to endure that pain in order to enjoy the treasure? Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a famous Christian pastor and theologian who was imprisoned by the Nazis and then executed by them in the Second World War. But he wrote these very profound and wise words. There is nothing that can replace the absence of someone dear to us. And one should not even attempt to do so. One must simply hold out and endure it. And at first that sounds very hard, but at the same time it is also a great comfort. For to the extent the emptiness truly remains unfilled, one remains connected to the other person through it. It is wrong to say that God fills the emptiness. God in no way fills it, but much more leaves it precisely unfilled, and thus helps us preserve, even in pain, the authentic relationship. Furthermore, the more beautiful and full the remembrances, the more difficult the separation. But gratitude transforms the torment of memory into silent joy. One bears what was lovely in the past, not as a thorn, but as a precious gift deep within, a hidden treasure of which one can always be certain. Lastly, thirdly, for many of us, our faith leads us to believe that death is not the end. For myself, rather obviously, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And my belief and hope is that death is not final. The story of Jesus is the story of his triumph over death. We believe as Christians that he was raised from the dead and that God promises that for all those who have faith in him, they too can share in that resurrection and receive an eternal life. Also, as a Christian, I have a hope that one day all will be different. There'll be no more tragic death and waste of life. For almost right at the very end of the Bible, there is a picture that is given to us, a picture that gives us a promise that God will one day wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. Surely, whatever our faith, and even if it is purely in the ultimate goodness of human nature, that is a hope to which we can all aspire, something to which we can fully commit ourselves in an attempt to make this a present reality as much as possible in the here and now. Death is not final. It is not the end.